Hello everyone, I'm Yusuke Kanebako. I want to talk about our paper critical gap between generalization error and empirical error in active learning. This is the overview of the presentation. In this paper, we discuss evaluation method for active learning. First, we point out the problems with existing evaluation methods in active learning. Furthermore, we argue that the data obtained during the active learning process is biased, and it is inappropriate to use such data for cross-validation to check the generalization performance of the model. Specifically, we demonstrate that cross-validation with data acquired by uncertainty-based active learning underestimates the generalization performance of the model. To solve these problems, we propose a simple solution in which validation data is fixed during the active learning process by initially sampled data. First, let's discuss the motivation behind active learning. The motivation for active learning is to minimize annotation cost. The main objective of active learning is to maximize model performance while minimizing annotation cost in case where annotation requires a high level of expertise or where annotation itself is expensive. For example, in image segmentation tasks. However, existing papers on active learning evaluate model performance using large amount of annotated data. It seems curious from the perspective of minimizing annotation cost in active learning. If there is a large amount of annotated data, the data should be used not only for evaluation but also for training the model. In developing practical machine learning projects, we conduct cross-validation with the available data to estimate the generalization performance in a production environment. Therefore, it is necessary to cross-validate the active learning process with the data sampled in the active learning process to estimate generalization performance. However, it is known that active learning method which sample data based on the uncertainty of model prediction can result in a biased distribution of sampled data. For example, consider a dataset with two classes of data, blue and green point, as shown in the left figure. If we randomly sample data as shown in the middle figure, we can say that the sampled data follows the original data distribution. However, when data is sampled based on the model's uncertainty, data points at the boundary between the two data classes distribution are sampled. Therefore, the distribution of randomly sampled data follows the original data distribution. We can accurately estimate the generalization performance by performing cross-validation with the sampled data. In contrast, if we perform cross-validation with data sampled based on the uncertainty, we cannot correctly estimate the generalization performance. We will now verify this problem using image classification on the CIFAR10 dataset. The figure on the left shows the cross-validation result using data selected by active learning. The horizontal axis is the percentage of the selected data volumes to the entire dataset. The vertical axis is the average accuracy of the 5-fold cross-validation. The middle figure shows the result of a model performance evaluation based on a large amount of test data, assuming that the data cannot be obtained in this case. In a realistic problem setting, we can only observe the results shown in the plot on the left, assuming we had the result from a large amount of test data, as shown in the figure on the middle. The difference between these two plots is shown in the figure on the right. As you can see, there is a significant gap between the generalization performance estimated through cross-validation using data selected by active learning and the actual generalization performance. In particular, we find that there is a significant gap in the sampling approach based on model uncertainty as an active learning method. We will describe a simple evaluation process for active learning to solve this problem. Let's assume we have data like the one shown in the far left figure. From this data, we randomly sample and annotate the data. Next, we use this data to train a model. The red line represents the classification boundary of the model. Now we move to the active learning process. In uncertainty-based active learning, data points closest to the classification boundary are selected. After that, we use the newly selected data to train and evaluate the model. However, in the proposed evaluation method, the validation data is fixed to the data randomly selected in step 1. Even when new data is selected during the active learning process, we only use the data that was initially randomly selected for validation. The data sampled through active learning is used only for training the model. By simplifying the evaluation method in this way, we can evaluate the model with validation data that follows the original data population and perform active learning that improve the model's classification performance. Here are the results of evaluating our method on 3 different datasets. We conducted evaluation using CIFAR10, CIFAR100, and SPHN dataset. As before, the horizontal axis is the percentage of the selected data volume to the entire dataset, and the vertical axis is the difference between the result of cross-validation using data sampled by active learning and the result evaluated on a large set of test data. Furthermore, the solid line represents the result of cross-validation performed on data selected by active learning and randomly split, and the dot line represents the result of the proposed method, as described on the previous page. The results show that the gap between the cross-validation result and the generalization performance of the test data is suppressed by the proposed evaluation method for both datasets and active learning methods. In the previous experiment, we randomly selected 10% of the entire dataset for validation. Here we present the result when the initial amount of data selected from each dataset is changed to 10%, 5%, and 1%. The proposed method achieved a lower gap in generalization performance than when performing cross-validation with random splitting, even when only 1% of the data is initially selected from each dataset. This result is achieved for both active learning method and dataset. Conclusions and limitations. We have considered the evaluation method for active learning and proposed a simple yet realistic method for estimating generalization performance. However, the proposed evaluation method is limited to scenario where the dataset is not biased and the randomly sampled data follows the population distribution. Addressing biased data distribution and imbalance level distribution remains a task for the future. Thank you.